At the time of filming, we are 4 months into the COVID crisis. Over 9 million are now on furlough. We have the largest rate of redundancies in a generation, and there are serious question marks over how the government have handled all this. So I wanted to do a video to give my opinion on how the government have handled this. Now, if you haven't watched the channel before, we do videos to help employees. And as opposed to many of the channels out there that we tend to find a little bit boring to watch, we try to be engaging, but also try to give you the real scope of what is actually going on. So to start with my opinion, firstly, I don't think the government have been all bad, but I do think there are things that they could have done better. And the easiest place to start is to go back to the beginning of the crisis. Back in March 2020, it was the first time that we, the public, became aware of COVID as a realistic threat on our own soil. Because Italy, a neighbouring European country, all of a sudden had the first major outbreak in Europe. It seemed like in just a matter of days that the disease had spread like wildfire there. So Italy decided to go into lockdown to stop the spread of the virus and ensure that their healthcare system didn't become overrun. At the time, it was widely broadcast that the UK was just 2 weeks behind Italy, and if we didn't do anything, we would be in the same position as Italy in a fortnight's time. Compared to the UK, Italy has a similar sized population, a similar sized economy, and a similar quality of healthcare system. So with that information, what did the UK government decide to do? Nothing. Absolutely nothing at all. Didn't do anything. Well, actually, that's probably not quite fair, is it? They did advise the good British public to use their common sense. And so, of course, this happened. Then, predictably, 2 weeks later, when the infection rate in the UK became spiralling out of control, the UK government finally decided to lock down the country when the NHS came perilously close to becoming overstretched. But why the delay? What logical reason was there for that? Boris Johnson's justification was that the government would follow the science. But the science was recommending that the country lock down. So I just don't buy that explanation. The decision to delay, in my opinion, was critical, because it's hit the UK much harder than it should have done, and we're still feeling the rippling effects of that 4 months later. Let's take the R rate, for example. Without infection control measures in place, the R rate stands at 3. So to break it down, if you had 1,000 people infected with the virus on day 1 of a 2-week period, 25,000 would then be infected 2 weeks later. The government hesitated because they were worried about the economy. Of course, the government are never going to admit that, but the only reason under those circumstances that you would choose to not lock a country down is because it would crash the economy. But that was short-term thinking. If a car company started building a new model, but early on in that process they discovered a design flaw that would end up killing people, they wouldn't just carry on building it, because they'd know that in a few months' time they'd have to do a major recall, and that would cost potentially billions, not to mention having to deal with all the lawsuits from all the deaths that they'd caused. But our government decided to basically carry on building those cars. What concerns me more though is that a first year's economics student could have worked out that that was a bad idea. So who on earth is responsible for the government's economic policy? This guy, of course, Rishi Sunak. Now, I'm not directly blaming Rishi Sunak for all this. He might have had the right idea but simply got outvoted. After all, there tends to be a lot of politics in politics. In response to all this, Rishi Sunak announced the job retention scheme, which encompasses the furlough scheme that we've spoken about extensively in previous videos. If you want to check those videos out, I'm going to put the link above. There you go. Additionally to the job retention scheme, Rishi Sunak announced other measures that came in not just at the time, but gradually over a period of time to help ease the UK economy. But for most people, it's the furlough scheme that we're most familiar with. And that's probably got something to do with the fact that a quarter of all of the people who are eligible for work in the UK are still on furlough. But the problem with all of these schemes is that they still suffer from the same government-themed blunder that's blighted this entire process. The government keep hesitating and only react once the horse has bolted. Italy, lockdown, we knew what was coming, and yet we still reacted too late. Under the furlough scheme, if you were on furlough, you were not allowed to work whilst on furlough. The government knew that this would hinder the recovery of the UK economy, but still decided to do nothing about it until the start of July. And now, 4 months into this crisis, we're being told that from the 24th of July, if you do go into a shop, you have to now wear a mask. Economically, this has cost far more money than it needed to. It's cost more jobs than it needed to, and it's cost more lives than it needed to. I think the government did make some good decisions along the way, but they were almost always too late. It's a bit like that friend you've got who takes an age to get the punchline to a joke, only this is much more serious. So if this crisis is anything to go by, it really does concern me how the government are going to handle things like Brexit negotiations. I guess that's a story for another video. So that pretty much sums up this video. If you do like this one, click the like button. If you've got any comments, you want to ask any questions, put them in the comments below. I do try to come back to every person. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the bell icon so you're not going to miss any one of our forthcoming videos.